Wouldn't you know it, just as I start to make a video, I've got a hen in the background who's bragging about this wonderful egg that she just laid. I'm almost tempted to say this will be a short video, but every time I do that, the video ends up being a half-hour long, so I won't say that. Just have a few things that I want to show you out here in the garden. Some late harvesting that I'm doing here, or well, late August harvesting anyway. This is the last day of August. And I want to take you up to the house and show you a couple of things, but I will get on with this and show you what I'm up to and try to make it as short as possible. I'm loving this corn. I've had it for 3 meals, I think, so far. This is close to the last of the early corn. Hopefully I'm going to get some off of the corn at the back of the cage that I planted from seed directly in the cage. These ones were from plants that I started in the greenhouse and transplanted outside. Anyway, I'm going to show you what I plan to do to freeze these, so I'll have some to enjoy this winter. And I just picked that many tomatoes. That's all that were ripe right now. I don't think that's enough to be bothered making a batch of sauce with just yet, but I'll put them in the refrigerator. They'll keep nicely for quite a while I gather more as they ripen. And when I have roughly that basket full, it makes a nice amount of sauce. I was just looking last night at the video that I did a year or two ago on making my sauce and canning it. So I won't be bothering to make a video this year. There's already one out there. But what I made that time was that basket full of tomatoes, and that ended up making 6 pints, and there was another, I don't know, half pint or so, I guess, that I said I saved and used immediately rather than canning it. So if I get 6 pints, that'll be good. I can use that over the winter. I like to make a pasta sauce. So I'll even have a lot of chilies. I can put some chilies in it to give it a little spice this year. As you can see, my potato plants have all died back. And it's been over a week now since we've had any rain, so I think they're dry enough that I'm going to harvest them. I won't bother to show you like I usually do with reveals on every one. The yield here is not very good at all. I did this one last night, and that's what I got out of one container. What's there? 8-10 potatoes maybe, and they're not very big. All of the potatoes that are left, including that one, are a variety of russet potato, which is mostly a baking potato, but it does very well if you boil it or steam it and mash it too. It's sort of an all-round potato. But I had that problem earlier in the summer, what was diagnosed as leaf edema, and I don't know if that I thought that they recovered afterwards, but I don't know if that's what happened later on, and that's why my plants died so early, because I was keeping them watered even though it was hot and dry. But they died off much earlier than they should have, so the potatoes are very small. But when I finish here, I'll show you what I get all together. This is on the doorstep outside of the cabin. Angel doesn't quite see what I'm doing, but she's up inspecting potatoes, I guess. That is what I got out of 6 containers. All of the containers except one had 3 seed potatoes in it, and that other extra container had 4 seed potatoes in it. Not a very big yield. I'm going to leave them here in the sun for a while. The soil was still wetter than I thought it would be after a week without rain, but there's a lot of peat moss in that soil, so it retains a lot of water, especially if the plants weren't alive to be using any of it. They won't sunburn that quickly. I'll just leave them here for 2 or 3 hours until they've dried off nicely, because if I stored them wet like that, they'd rot in no time. Every once in a while, we would pull up one like these. Not very many of them. And those are still small for a russet potato, but they're starting to become a respectable size anyway. One of those would be a serving, I think, for me. 2 for sure. But that is not a very good yield, and once I get them to the house I will weigh them, and I'll put the weight on the screen. But potatoes were a bit of a disaster this year. If you can see me now or not, probably looking right over the top of my head. That was me just finishing sowing a green manure crop of buckwheat. This is the bed that I grew my scallopini squash. Those plants are still there. And garlic and onions. And I got a garlic crop, but there was nothing to write home about, and the onions were a total write-off. I think the bed is really lacking in fertility, so the soil looks darker there now because I just spread the 9 containers of soil potting mix that I grew my potatoes in, and now I've put buckwheat seeds on top of that. I'll rake them in lightly and then tamp them down with the rake. I'll let that grow. I've left the zucchini plants because they're the scallopini plants because they're still producing a little bit. So I'll let those continue to grow. And when the frost kills the buckwheat and the scallopini, I have saved all of the manure and dressing out of the chicken coops when I cleaned them out last spring. And it's been aging all summer. I'm going to cover it completely with that and leave it over the winter, and I'll till it in the spring and hopefully have a bed that works much better. Well, let's go up to the house. There's a couple of things I'd like to show you up there. Well, I've blanched and frozen a lot of different kinds of vegetables over the years with fairly good success, but I must admit this is the first time I've ever done corn. So I had a look on the internet, and basically it's done the same way, I guess, that I've been doing other vegetables. This is a steamer that I just use for blanching and freezing, but you could steam any kind of vegetables in it. I only picked 5 ears. And they're down there in the raw steam, and I will set the timer for 5 minutes. So they've been in the steamer for 5 minutes. And now you bring them out and shock them immediately in ice water. And they should remain in the ice water at least as long as they were in the steamer. And that will completely stop the cooking process. I don't cook corn for a long time anyway. I know some people boil it and boil it and boil it. Well, you're not trying to eat the cob, it's just the kernels, and I figure 3 or 4 minutes in boiling water and my corn's ready to go anyway, but this would just be cooked very briefly when it comes out of the freezer. But after it's been in here for 5 minutes, I'll put it in a colander and drain it, and then I'll show you what I do next. Well, they've been out of the ice water and in a colander, draining for a while, and now I've put them in one of these bags, and I'm going to vacuum seal them to get rid of all the air, which should get rid of all of the freezer burn. And that is that. All sealed. I make these, but you have to make the bags each time to the size that you want. I have started making them larger than I know that I need, because too many times in the past I have made the bag too small and you just end up throwing that out anyway because nothing will go in it. So that is that. Let's move on and look at some lacto-fermenting. Well, the first thing I want to do, I guess, is some more lacto-fermenting. I'll give you a look in a few minutes at the mixed vegetables that I started in the last video. But this time I'm going to attempt to do lacto-fermented dilly beans. And some of my dill, 1 head of dill. I have got to cut down the dill in the hoop house, or I'm going to be really overrun with it next year, that it's all starting to go to seed. 1 clove of garlic. And these are monastery beans. Seeds given to me by Southpaw Davy in Switzerland. Didn't get a large crop, Davy, but I didn't plant that many plants anyway, and unfortunately I didn't pay that much attention to them. But I'm going to try some with dilly beans, and the remainder that are out in the garden right now I'm going to let keep growing so I can have some seed to plant next year. I can get these in there. Could have taken time, I suppose, and laid them in and made them look prettier. But pretty isn't what I'm after. I want some dilly beans. I've never done dilly beans before. I've heard so many people, I've still got a stem end on it. I've heard so many people talk about them, but I've never done them myself. Use this gizmo, I guess, to pack them down just a little. And once again, I've mixed 2 cups of the pickling liquid. It's 1 teaspoon of non-iodized salt, and I've used a non-iodized sea salt per cup of water. And I've mixed 2 cups. I won't need it all, but thing they call the pebble, which when I show you the other bottle in a minute, it really works well. It holds it down very nicely. New top. These I will, just the same as the other ones that I started in the last video, the mixed vegetables, I will keep these in a dark cupboard until they've really started to ferment really well before I put them in the refrigerator. So let's have a look at the mixed vegetables. I keep calling these mixed vegetables because I'm not clear on how you pronounce the Italian. It's an Italian thing, giardini era, maybe, perhaps, I really don't know. But they started to ferment within 24 hours. Started seeing bubbles in there. And I had them in a bowl in the cupboard because I thought it would dispel liquid, and it didn't. Any time I've ever made pickles before using an airlock on a larger bottle, it always dispelled some liquid. But this works much better than that. It doesn't. And I don't know if you can see that's the glass pebble there. Has held everything down below the brining liquid. I let it go almost a week, maybe 6 days or so. And it was starting to get cloudy like this, so I put it in the refrigerator. That doesn't stop the fermentation, it just slows it down. But it also makes it so it doesn't get any cloudier. If you left it out at room temperature for the full 3 to 4 weeks while you're fermenting it, it would be very, very cloudy. Quite murky, actually. Well, that is that. Get my dilly beans in the cupboard, and put this back in the fridge, and when I'm ready to try those in a couple of weeks' time, I'll do that on one of my videos. Well, thank you very much for watching. I'll close this down and get it uploaded, and in the end, I guess it's not as long as some of my videos.